the outside.
Okay, Jimmy Vasser starts out of row 2. Alongside him is Greg Moore.
Row 3, Mark Blundell. Alongside him is Parker Johnstone. Row 4,
The man we were talking about, Scott Pruitt. Alongside him from Brazil, Mauricio Gugelmin.
and then moving back to Christian Fittipaldi, who sits alongside one of the most experienced men ever to race down here, Bobby Rahal.
Row 6, Jill de Ferran from Brazil, driving for Derek Walker in the Valvoline entry. And then the man that leads the championship, Michael Andretti.
Moving back to row 7, one of the most impressive performances yesterday was by Dario Franchitti, the Scottish man with the Italian name. Wonderful to see him in Hogan Racing. Beside him, Andre Rivero, two-time winner in IndyCar.
Row 8, position 15 from Mexico, Adrian Fernandez in the first of the Lolas in the field. Alongside him from Columbus, Ohio, Brian Herter in the Reynard.
One of the surprises of qualifying, Al Unser Jr., way down in 17th place. He had a broken shock absorber during qualifying. And Galter Salles from Brazil, another rookie.
Yet another Brazilian, one of many in the field, Raul Bocel, teammate to Scott Pruitt. Alongside him in the Della Pena Motorsports entry, Richie Hearn in another of the Lolas.
Row 11 from Canada, Patrick Carpentier came successfully through the Formula Atlantic ranks, and beside him is Mad Max.
Juan Fangio II from Miami, Florida, of course originally from Argentina, on row 12. Alongside him, a rookie, Paul Jasper, drives for Dale Coyne. Look out for him.
Row 13, PJ Jones has raced midgets in Australia in the past. Beside him, the youngest man on the field, 20-year-old Michel Jourdain from Mexico.
And the final row of the grid, German Formula 3 driver Arndt Meyer from Hanover. And last but not least is Hiro Maschuster from San Clemente, the man that owns the Swift Engineering Company but is driving a Reynard Toyota today. That is the field for this 7th running of the Indy Carnival event here on the beautiful Gold Coast. Previous winners, well, there's been a number of people that certainly had their name up in lights here. John Andretti in 1991, Emerson Fittipaldi in 92, Nigel Mansell in 93, Michael Andretti in 94, Paul Tracy in 95, Jimmy Vasser, of course, last year.
And this whole field is being led round by the legend himself. He's in the Lotus pace car. We had a quick word with him to John Smales earlier. Mario Andretti travels to all of these races to look after his son Michael. We are on the final pace lap. They will bring the pace up slowly. Paul Tracy, he is menacing whenever he fills the driver's mirror. Look at Vassar, so good last year. Blundell, full of confidence.
IndyCar racing, cosmopolitan, a variety of nationalities. We have 11 drivers from the USA, 2 from Italy, 6 from Brazil, 2 from Mexico, 3 from Canada as we look over the shoulder of Christian Fittipaldi now bringing the engine revs up. We have a couple from the UK, 1 from Argentina and 1 from Japan.
And that was a quick glimpse again of Christian Fittipaldi's onboard camera. We will have spectacular pictures for you this afternoon, because all through qualifying and practice we can look over their shoulders, we can hear their gear changes, we can see their mistakes, and we can follow it closer than ever before. Something else to mention, it is extremely warm out there, so a bumpy concrete canyon with this type of heat, Neil, is physically very difficult.
It is very difficult. They have the benefit, of course, of breeze in their face, but the G-forces that these cars generate through the drivers, they're so stiff to ride in. Of course, the seats fit them perfectly, but it transmits a lot of energy through the body, and it's hot out there. It's in the high 20s, it's very humid, and these cars are not easy to drive, and in order to be a winner, you have to be at 110% for the entire 2 hours.
Now here's one of those onboard cameras I told you about. This is Christian Fittipaldi. We will actually be able to see him reach down from the steering wheel and change gear on those sequential gearboxes. Just like a motorcycle. There he goes, it all up one way, forward to go down, and all the way back, the same direction for every gear as you go up to the gearbox. It makes for a faster gear change. See this? Accelerates, brings the turbocharger up onto full boost, warms the tires and warms the oil in the engine.
Which in 1997 has been reduced. That is the turbo boost. The new rules for the cars this year, the boost has been reduced by 5 inches. Now I know that doesn't necessarily mean anything to you. In vague terms, we're talking 100 horsepower theoretically on paper, but already the engine manufacturers have improved that number. Other changes, aerodynamics have changed on the cars to try and give them less grip, make the cars less reliant on the aero package, and they've got less fuel, and that's a critical factor this afternoon.
This is the MCIS's They will go from single file to side by side, 2 by 2. They'll go around the Honda hairpin. Then Zanardi and Paul Tracy will line up side by side, and then you have that blast and that drag race down into that Sunbelt chicane. So the Sunbelt Indy Carnival is about to start, and Paul Tracy is extremely good on under these conditions. Watch Zanardi and Tracy, and don't take your eye off Greg Moore in the blue car in row 2. They're looking for the green flag. There it flies out our window here. Green flag, it's underway. Zanardi has the advantage.
Good start by Vassar. Tracy pulls up nice and straight. In fact, they've maintained grid order in the first 4 positions as they get through the first chicane.
I just saw an accident. Michael Andretti got a smack in the rear end. Michael Andretti did get hit. But Zanardi clearly now in the lead. Paul Tracy a second. Look at Parker Johnstone trying to fight off Scott Pruitt.
Greg Moore just covering his tracks. Parker Johnstone down the inside. Scott Pruitt there. Mauricio Gugelmin. With the exception of Andretti getting a tap, it looks like it's been a relatively clean start. The first 4 corners heading down the back straight for the first time to the DMSs. Approaching 270 kilometres an hour. Ribeiro making a move. Here comes Pruitt down the inside of Parker Johnstone.
Gets tight when you get down to the braking zone. Oh, he hits him! Scott Pruitt hits the back of Parker Johnstone. Johnstone, how did he catch that at this early stage when the tyres are barely up to temperature?
That was a very, very good save and a big moment for Parker Johnstone in the Team Cool Green Reynard. Wow, there he is.
Did he do any damage? Yes, he did. He's got a puncture. Parker Johnstone has a puncture in that left rear tyre. Look at the gap now, so Pruitt gets through eventually.
He'll be on the radio. The crew will be preparing for Johnstone's arrival. This is a tragic way to start the race for him. He's losing valuable track time.
Qualified so well. He was 6th fastest on the 3rd row of the grid, but now Zanardi clearly in the lead. Paul Tracy, that's the Goodyear tyres versus the Firestone tyres. Firestone on Zanardi, Goodyear on Paul Tracy's. But Parker Johnstone will be our first visitor to the pit lane following that smack from Scott Pruitt.
Standing lap time for Alex Zanardi, 142.2. 281 kilometres per hour, our laser speed readout. Tracy in hot pursuit, 0.7 of a second behind. Jimmy Vassar in 3rd, Greg Moore in 4th, then Scott Pruitt. That's an excellent start. Mark Blundell behind, then Mauricio Gugelmin.
There's a yellow flag. Somebody must be off the road. We just saw the yellow flag at the top of the picture.
Parker's gone into the pit lane as we expected. Now what has happened there with Tracy? Oh, chaos!
Gilles de Ferran's in the middle of it. There is a full course yellow. Gilles de Ferran's car is destroyed.
Michel Jourdain
is in there. Paul Jasper is in there.
Arndt Meyer, I think I saw wobbling around the back. That's a frightful mess at the front of de Ferran's car. This is the Derek Walker Valvoline entry. Now, I saw Paul Tracy in trouble too. There is debris everywhere. This is going to mean a major delay. A major delay. Parker Johnstone has been in and out.
Save fuel.
What has happened here? Whoa.
Oh, there's something big going on here that we haven't seen yet, because there is debris and wheels from somebody else's car. Who is... Oh, is that Christian Fittipaldi? Well, there is a serious crash.
It's Michael Andretti just finding a way through the pack. Behind him is Andre Ribeiro.
That was a red car.
Christian Fittipaldi.
Christian. The brand new Swift car, it looks very heavily damaged at the front. Christian Fittipaldi is unable to get out from that vehicle, which means his feet must be trapped down in the front side of that monocoque. So a disaster at this early stage for Christian Fittipaldi, who went so well here all weekend, qualified 9th fastest, and now he's in trouble.
Was in 8th position at the start of that 2nd lap.
Red flag, red flag.
Red flag. We're going to have to stop this race. The race will be stopped. There is far too much damage. Christian Fittipaldi, you see how heavily damaged the front of that carbon fibre monocoque is.
Here's another McDonald's replay. Let's see if we can pick up just exactly what happened here. Whoa, Christian Fittipaldi strikes that outside wall very, very heavily. Now that was at the Sunbelt chicane. And in fact, it was on the exit of the Sunbelt chicane. That is a very heavy impact. Now, what role has Gilles de Ferran played? Damage to the front of his car?
Look at this. Look at the pictures we have here of Christian Fittipaldi's Swift just absolutely destroyed after an impact possibly with Gilles de Ferran initially, but there is a destroyed racing car which gives you an idea of the violence.
On board with Christian Fittipaldi. Does it tell us that he's been hit from behind?
I wonder did Gilles de Ferran hit Christian Fittipaldi?
Now this is near the pit exit. This is on the main straight, just past our commentary point.
What's the impact?
Goodness me. Okay, this is the approach to the Sunbelt chicane. Now it all starts to make sense.
It's only conjecture, but Gilles de Ferran was right in the middle of that. Both of Gilles de Ferran's front wheels were broken. Yes, indeed, he did.
Yes.
Neil, he interlocked wheels with Fittipaldi.
And this is on board with Michael Andretti now trying to get through the debris. Look at this, what decisions to make. That is a frightful and scary impact for Christian Fittipaldi. We hope he is okay.
And that is a speed, Neil, of what, in excess of 250 Ks?
Well and truly, the speed of the cars at the finish line beacon, I got a printout yesterday, 290 kilometres an hour.
Well, when you get an accident like this and you see the type of debris, the only thing I can tell you is it looks like an airline accident because there is so much debris. They had no option but to wave the red flag. And Carl Haas, the owner of this team, the instigator of this new Swift chassis, the design project started just a year ago. In 9 months after announcing it, they actually had the car testing. It came out hugely successful at Homestead with a win. But this is a sight no racing driver likes to see because Christian Fittipaldi is still trapped inside that racing car. We know that he is conscious. We saw him talking to the safety workers, and they are the very best in the business. And there's Gilles de Ferran's car. I do believe he was directly involved, Neil, with that incident, and those front wheels tell a story because I think the left one or the right one might have got broken on Gilles with contact with Christian Fittipaldi first.
Yes, it's difficult to know from the angles we've seen so far, Derek, just who was doing what to who, but obviously Gilles de Ferran has played a major role in this incident, and Christian Fittipaldi has come off second best, and the CART safety crew currently working on the front of the Swift racing car chassis, just trying to extract Christian safely and calmly from this chassis.
You see the jaws of life, which is the cutting equipment that they have down the front of the cars, but we do have a variety of replays that we can show you here because this is a very, very violent crash that shows you. There's Christian.
The second impact seems to have done a lot of the damage there.
Remember, the speed is more than 250 clicks. Serious impact. There's the second one. Look at the car smash into those concrete walls.
The first one was violent. The first one was just horrendous. Goodness me. I could not think of a worse place to have an accident on the Gold Coast Indy course. It's just beyond the main commentary and timing area, beyond the finish line on this track and the approach to the Sunbelt chicane, which is the left-right complex. Let's see if we can get some more information from pit lane and John Smales.
Shocked people behind me in the Christian Fittipaldi team tried to get to Carl Haas. At the moment, not a good time to talk to him. The news from race control is because we didn't complete a lap, there was a red flag as cars still came round. There is going to be a complete restart to the race. The drivers will not be allowed, however, to refuel, we're told. Paul Tracy, meantime, with some damage to his car, is trying to get a backup car ready for the restart.
Thank you, John. Christian Fittipaldi about to be put on the stretcher. They have freed him from the pedal box area. Christian has yet to win an IndyCar race. Almost won Detroit last year. In fact, had it all wrapped up, made a slight mistake late in the race, and his teammate Michael Andretti, who had followed him so long, got through to win. But there's something you like to see. A round of applause from the appreciative crowd here. Glad to see that Christian is out of that car. Of course, Neil, one of the driver's worst fears in a single-seater racing car is when you hit a concrete wall at speed that you can get foot and ankle injuries.
That's correct, but fortunately the cars are improving in safety all the time, Derek, as you well know. These carbon tubs that the cars are built out of involve a honeycomb, aluminium and carbon construction and Kevlar construction. It's enormously strong. The cars have also been, the drivers have been set further back in the car in 1997. Now he's on board with Christian. Bang! Look at, oh my goodness me. That is horrendous.
Now, see how close Michael came to getting gathered up with that whole thing? So, sees the crash continue down to his left-hand side, so he goes straight through. But Gilles de Ferran interlocked wheels with Christian, and we're glad to see he is finally out of that car. Unfortunately, he is on his way to the emergency centre.
Scenes we hate to see, but we'll of course update you on the condition of Christian Fittipaldi in what is turning out to be a major delay to Indy Carnival 1997. As Derek and Neil pointed out, the race start will now take place sometime down the track. We'll be back with more after this.
What does it do to a driver?
Well, I don't know anything. I haven't seen what happened. I've only heard there was a big crash. I'm concerned about what we have to do to get back in the race so we can try to win the race.
Yeah, well, I'm standing in front of the Walker pit here. Behind me is Gilles de Ferran's spare car. The panic is they can't find Gilles. They don't. Somebody said he wasn't hurt in any way, but they've had no message back. He's not at the medical centre. But maybe if it was Gilles' fault or he just hit him up the back and felt a little bit guilty about it, then maybe he would have gone with Christian to the medical centre. You can see here that it's all going on right. We've got Gilles. Let me see if I can have a quick word. Gilles, what happened?
It's a very unfortunate incident. I mean, I was trying to overtake Christian, and I ended up touching, I think he probably didn't see me, and, I touched the wall and his side all at the same time, and when that happened, we both lost control and had a massive accident. I just hope he's all right.
Yeah, I know. Looked very, very scary. Anyway, I'll leave you alone and pray to God it's okay. Thank you very much, Gilles.
Now, Parker Johnstone gets a reprieve because we do believe it is a complete new start, and Parker Johnstone will be able to get back in, get his damage repaired and get back out on the racetrack. John?
Yes, Parker Johnston missed the first lap melee with Christian Fittipaldi because he had his own crash. What happened, Parker?
Well, went down to the first chicane in the back straightaway, and Scott Pruitt had a run on the inside, and as I turned in, he just got into the left rear of the car and flatted it, and nearly turned me around, but not quite, and we managed to drive it back to the pit lane just in time for the red flag. So the car's fine. In the one lap, it was working quite well, and I hope Christian's okay.
You can see some of the scars on the front wing of the car, can't you?
Well, you can. I mean, these cars are extremely tough. They're meant to go over 200 miles an hour, so on a street course, it gets pretty rough and tough. Unfortunately, that happened on the way back to the pits with my flatted tire. I just nudged Brian Herta trying to get back. It's one of those things that happens sometimes, but I think his car is fine, our car is fine, and we look forward to restart, and hopefully hope everybody that was involved in that is okay.
Thank you, Parker.
Sure.
Well, talk about the scars of battle. 2 incidents Parker Johnstone's been involved in, one with Scott Pruitt, the other with Brian Herta. But you could hear, Neil, the emotion in Gilles de Ferran's voice as he spoke about Christian, because they are very good friends. And there is Christian being brought into the emergency medical centre if he is seriously injured. And there's Carl Haas and Brian Lyles. Brian Lyles is engineer in the lower left of your screen. Carl Haas is there, also the owner of the team. Brian Lyles in the red pants of the team colours. Carl Haas, the ever-present cigar. There's Michael Andretti now, who, of course, has to put this incident totally out of his mind. Remember, he saw everything that happened to Christian, a better seat than anybody else had because it happened in front of him, but he has his helmet on and is ready to go back to battle here.
Michael talking with his engineer, and a very unsettling time for the Newman Haas team. Of course, this man currently leads the PPG Kart World Series in 1997 after 1 round in Miami.
As we look at Dario Franchitti, of course, he has seldom seen an accident that big, that early in a race. But also, can you believe that Paul Tracy had another incident separate to everybody else and would have destroyed his race? Now he also gets a second chance.
A number of drivers with a reprieve, and I'm sure interesting thoughts in the mind of Dario Franchitti in his rookie year, the Flying Scotsman. And a busy scene in the pit lane as we await news of the condition of Christian Fittipaldi. Parker Johnston obviously with that uppermost in his mind. We'll be back shortly from Indy Carnival. Welcome back to Indy Carnival 97, and if you've just joined us, the drivers are waiting for a restart to this race. It will begin all over again after a disaster on the first lap. Among many incidents, Christian Fittipaldi hammered the wall after a clash with Gilles de Ferran. Now, Gilles is back and safe in the pits repairing his car. Not so Christian Fittipaldi, who initially showed that he was at least still conscious, threw his wheel out of the car. I can tell you that these sort of crashes can pull as much as 100 Gs, so we're concerned about his safety with spinal damage perhaps. Now we go to Barry Sheen.
Jimmy, not such a bad start. Tell us what happened.
I just held my own on the start. I was running third and exiting the second chicane. Tracy hit the tires and bent his suspension as it collapsed going down into the A&A hotel corner, and so I was in second, and then I'm told there was a big wreck and they red flagged it, but that was past the wreck was past. Everybody had finished a lap, and from where I come from, when you finish one lap, the race starts, but for some reason they're going to call it a non-start and then start over.
Yeah, and what it does is bottle everybody up into the first corner again.
Yeah, and it allows Tracy to get into his backup car, and anybody else, they can do whatever they want. So it's a big break for Tracy and the Penske team. But I don't know about you, Barry. I mean, as long as I've been racing, if you complete one lap, the race has started. And somebody needs to make a good explanation to me on why they're going to call it and restart another race.
I never did understand officialdom.
Yeah. The bottom line is they can do whatever they want.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Jimmy.
All right, Barry.
Defending CART World Series champion Jimmy Vasser talking to Barry Sheen. Officials, of course, now with another big job, and that is cleaning up the track. There's Al Unser Jr. Now, he's also with the Penske team, and I no doubt they're pretty happy at the moment of getting that second chance. Here's Derek Daly with Neil Crompton.
And the unusual thing about racing drivers, even the ones that see incidents as serious as we've just witnessed, they have this incredible ability to block this incident totally out of their mind, get back into the racing car again, and completely forget this. Now look at this, look how serious this is. Fittipaldi out of control, still doing probably 200 Ks, smashes into the wall at the right side of your screen, and yet racing drivers will strap themselves back in again, Neil, and go about their business as if it never happened.
And that's their job. Look at this second impact now as Fittipaldi slams the wall. It's the second time the car flies up into the air, launched by the ripple strip. A passenger in the car. As I mentioned, this is the second of two very big impacts in the Swift chassis for Christian Fittipaldi of Brazil. Newman Haas driver. Now let's go down to pit lane and talk with Barry Sheen, because I believe he has Christian's teammate Michael Andretti.
Michael, you got hit up the back of the start.
Yeah, it just went to a dead stop and somebody hit me in the back, but hopefully it'll be all right.
And you were saying that they're going to restart the race now and start it as a fresh race.
Yeah, I'm not sure that that's right. You know, we did all complete a lap, so I'm not sure it should be a complete restart, but that's the way what they're going to do.
And the effects of making a complete restart, why does that disadvantage you?
Well, for one, I was up to about 7th position already, and now I got to go back to 12th or whatever, so that hurts us. And also, it just bunches everybody up together again and makes it a little more dangerous.
It gives it another chance for the same sort of things to happen.
Right.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Gilles de Ferran's damaged motor vehicle being brought back into the pits. It has a tarpaulin on it because there is oil leaking from underneath it, and to prevent any damage on the track. You can see most of the damage to de Ferran's car happened on the left-hand side. It's terrible when you see a motor car come back like this, Derek. Front right-hand wheel, all at odds. Have a look in here and you can see the wishbones bent out of shape from the impact with Christian Fittipaldi's car.
Alex, complete disaster for a first lap.
Yeah, for me, quite egoistically speaking, was good. I was in a good situation, was first, and in a street circuit is always very difficult. You know, the first lap you always expect something strange to happen, and it did happen. So I'm happy that all the guys walked away with no problems, and It's just a shame that we had to stop the race.
Well, that's the thing. The start is so important, as all the drivers know, and you put your big effort in, and it worked out. No problems at the chicane. So, what do you reckon for the second start? Same again?
Well, it wasn't a fantastic start, but you know, when you're first, you can't improve your position. You can't gain anything else because you're already first, and the only thing you want to do is turn safely at turn one in front of everybody. That's what I'm gonna try to do again. I'm starting from the best spot to do that. Then if I can set up my pace, which I think it will be, I hope it's going to be strong enough to stay up in front, and then we'll see from there.
And how did the car feel on full tanks and everything?
The car is okay. And only question mark is tire wear and fuel consumption. But I think we should be all right.
The driver's not so bad.
Driver's not too bad. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
A very relaxed Alex Zanardi, probably about the only man in the front-running part of the field that didn't get involved in some kind of an incident. As we look there at Paul Tracy, he was a guy that got off very lightly as we go back on board with Christian Fittipaldi.
Now remember, De Ferran is on the left-hand side of Fittipaldi. He hits him. He's out of control now.
Yeah. You know what's happened there, Derek? The approach to... that is a terrible shunt. Here's on board with Michael. Look further up ahead, right up on the horizon. Here it is, see De Ferran, the white car, the back of the car is white. He tried to go down the left side. Okay. The approach to this corner, which is a long, lazy right, requires you to run parallel to the wall very, very temporarily. De Ferran obviously had better corner exit speed and was going to make a move on Fittipaldi, who didn't know he was there, didn't see him in the mirror. Christian has moved across to the appropriate racing line, not knowing that Jules was there. The two of them have interlocked and has turned Fittipaldi across the nose of De Ferran, who's struck the wall. That's Andre Ribeiro from Tasman Motorsports.
And something that was a reasonable effort at making a pass suddenly turns into a bit of a disaster for Gilles De Ferran, who really has got himself involved in quite a few first lap incidents. Now, speaking of incidents, Neil has kept an unofficial record here of the number of incidents on that one lap alone, and it's quite incredible, Neil.
It is amazing. I've just been scratching a couple of them down, Derek. We had Michael Andretti getting tangled up in the Sunbelt chicane at the beginning of the race, so they'd only travelled a couple of 100 metres. Now, there's more activity down in the pit lane. Let's go down to John.
High drama, in fact, down here in the pit lane, Neil. Quite a number of the teams are changing to their backup cars, as this will be a complete restart. However, there's some confusion amongst the teams themselves as to whether one lap was officially completed. If so, some of the teams are saying that the other teams shouldn't be allowed to change cars. In fact, the Brahma team, the Pat Patrick team of Scott Pruitt, has now marched past me straight up to race control to see Dennis Swan up and Wally Dallin back in race control to ascertain exactly the situation and therefore perhaps enter a protest. Barry Sheen.
Joe, how long have you been a motorsport fan?
Well, I think like any boy, it's been since I've been about that big.
When did you get involved with Chip first year?
It was 3 years ago, and I was fortunate. Actually, Chip grew up about 7 miles from me, back in Pennsylvania. I'm just fortunate he let me be associated with the team. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, the point about the motorsport thing is so completely different from your sporting life that it's very rare you get an athlete that is involved with motorsport.
Well, I think one of the things is about it is I've always wanted to get in the car and go fast, and I enjoy fast cars, and I wish I'd started a long time ago and like to give that a try sometime, but not this lifetime now.
What about, have you ever driven one of these things?
No, I haven't. I'd love to, but they're too expensive.
Too expensive, and probably you're too big and healthy to get in there.
I don't know, I might be able to squeeze in there if they let me.
I really appreciate it. And have you enjoyed your time on the Gold Coast?
Yes, we have. My wife and I have been here with our 4 kids since last Friday, and we've had a blast. And they're not ready to go home yet, but unfortunately, back to school.
Will you come back?
Oh, yeah, definitely. You bet.
You're welcome, Joe. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
American footballing legend Joe Montana. They don't come much bigger than him physically as well as literally in the United States. He's co-owner with Chip Ganassi of that very successful team which brought a world championship to Jimmy Vasser last year. In fact, that was Joe's first year as a co-owner, so he's had a pretty good success rate in the CART World Series. We'll be back shortly.
Spoken to medical people. Christian Fittipaldi is conscious he's okay, but he's broken his lower right leg, so he's broken the tibia and fibula in his right leg, but thank God he's okay. You know, if you call a broken leg okay, that is. Back to you, Bill.
Barry Sheen with great news down in the pits. It could have been much worse, obviously, with the enormous impact that he underwent. Let's go to Mark, to Neil Crompton, of course, and Derek Daly.
Thank you. Wonderful pictures here from the Whitman's Lightship. That's been here all weekend, has given us some wonderful pictures, particularly through practice and qualifying. It will give us overhead shots as this race goes on. But we've had many, many incidents. As a quick recap, the start of the race, the first incident was Andretti at the Sunbelt chicane. He got hit off the backside by somebody. Then Parker Johnstone was lucky to catch his smack from Pruitt. He got a puncture, has got a reprieve, has got that fixed up. Tracy, then at about the same time as De Ferran hit Fittipaldi, Tracy got involved in an incident at the top of the dime turn, I believe. This is a look at Richie Hearn here. Richie Hearn, one of the drivers in the Lolas. But De Ferran's incident with Fittipaldi was the serious one. Heavy, heavy damage. I'm glad to see that Christian Fittipaldi is okay despite serious injuries. Things like that could be so much worse at speeds in excess of 250 kilometers an hour. But Zanardi gets back into his office for the day, and they can block out everything and start it all over again. Now, Paul Tracy did mention the incident earlier. Here's the aftermath. This is the MCI corner at this stage. Look at the left front suspension of Paul Tracy's car. He effectively is out of the Indy Carnival, except the incident with Fittipaldi is happening as this picture is being taken. So Tracy also gets a reprieve.
He's a lucky guy because that happened at the dime turn, which is right down opposite the A&A Hotel. At the beginning of lap number 2, as we look at Paul Tracy sitting in the cockpit of his Penske, the new car for 97 appears to be very competitive. He got off to a flying start at Miami with second placing and obviously therefore second in the points. See the cockpit protection around the side of the driver's head in 1997. That's been increased and improved. Derek mentioned in yesterday's coverage of IndyCar qualifying that the seats for this year, as we look at Greg Moore, driving for Forsyth, a tremendous job, 4th on the grid. Very limited mileage in this new Reynard chassis. Remember, this is one of the teams that at the last moment decided to switch from the Lola chassis, which are also made in the UK, to the Reynard chassis. And he's done a tremendous job so far. A great young talent.
And of course, that Reynard chassis designed by Malcolm Osler. Malcolm from Sydney, so successful now behind the drawing board. In fact, he was a Formula Ford racer of note many years ago, I believe.
He was. He was a very good Formula Ford racer. In fact, the last time that I saw him run in Formula Ford was here at Surfers Paradise. Some of the Indigenous folk enjoying their afternoon at the Gold Coast Indy. But not at this Surfers Paradise track, at the old one, 3 or 4 miles behind us. Right. We're looking over the top here of one of the Chip Ganassi cars. Al Unser Jr. pensive. And there's the ambulance taking Christian Fittipaldi away from the medical centre to nearby hospital, and with a broken leg, we understand. And whilst that's bad news, we believe the injuries could have been a lot worse. When you consider the speed of that impact, Derek, with the concrete wall just beyond the main straight finish line area here, that was frightful. The eyes of Paul Tracy. He has had a reprieve. Tore the front left off the car at the beginning of lap number 2 with a misjudgment, picked up tyres on the apex. That's Jimmy Vasser,
who does wear these, I think, unusual looking glasses for a racing driver. They're not prescription, however they do help his eyesight, but also they're close to his eyes to stop some wind buffeting also. John Smales, you're down there?
Indeed I am. I'm standing at the front of the Paul Tracy car with John Vassilov, the team manager, or rather crew chief for the Penske car. You've got him in the spare car now.
Yes, sir.
And you've got the right tyres on. There was some concern with officials. Roger Penske was arguing with officials about which tyre should be used.
Oh, we're okay. The officials wouldn't have let us come out here if they were the wrong ones, so we're okay.
You're playing it very cool, John.
Well, the panic was back there. I don't know if you caught any of that on film or not.
How's your driver? Is he under control now?
Oh, yeah, he's good.
How do you keep the driver's head on in a situation like this with so much panic going on around him?
We don't worry about him. Luckily, he's got his fiancée Lisa to keep him calm, and we just try and keep ourselves calm.
John, thank you.
All right.
Paul Tracy also has the great name of Rick Mears in his pit lane, who was really working very closely with Tracy on discipline, on trying to convince Paul, look, you don't have to win these things on the very first lap of the race. Now, Paul has fallen off the bandwagon so many times in the past, but Roger Penske believes in his raw ability so much, he continues to give him these golden opportunities. But again, Tracy needs to display some discipline.
Well, they're set for a restart. On the other side of this coming break, we should be ready to get it.
Go back out for another 65 laps. But the news from race control is that up to 10 teams have suggested that they may protest the result after this race is over. Their theme, how come some teams can change whole cars and they're not even allowed to change their tyres?
Well, that's going to rage on for some time, and probably best for us to put it out of our minds for the moment as we look at Michael Andretti on board the Swift, because that debate will rage. But for the moment, we've got some motor racing to do, 65 laps of it, hopefully, around this 4.5 kilometre concrete canyon, which incidentally takes around 6 weeks to build. Some 2,500 concrete blocks, and Christian Fittipaldi and Gilles de Ferran tried to shift a couple of them 3/4 of an hour ago. They're 4.5 tonnes individually. There's also 10,200 tyres involved in the construction of this circuit, Derek, and Paul Tracy managed to find one of those and tear the front left corner off the Penske.
And all the cars that you see here, well, there are plenty more spare cars back in the garages. And all, they brought 55 cars here on the trip. They filled up 2.5 jumbo jets. And those jumbos, there's a lot of weight. They had to stop off for fuel stops in Hawaii, in Nadi and the Fuji Islands. So a huge logistics problem just trying to get this traveling world circus here to Surfers Paradise.
And keep in mind, they decamp tomorrow and head to Long Beach, California, where it all happens again 7 days from now, as we go on board with Alex Zanardi looking back to Paul Tracy. All 4 corners intact on the Penske. There's Zanardi, there's Tracy, there's Vassar, Greg Moore, Mark Blundell, Parker Johnstone, Raoul Bassel, Mauricio Gugelmin, Bobby Rahal, Gilles de Ferran. If you have just joined us, the reason that we're restarting is we had a very eventful 1.5 laps starting this race, and it culminated in this incident here between Gilles de Ferran and Christian Fittipaldi, both Brazilian drivers. De Ferran trying to round up Fittipaldi on the outside just in the braking area at the end of the main straight here, and it set off this mayhem. The red car with the Budweiser logo that went through the foreground then was Christian Fittipaldi, who's made a very heavy impact with the concrete wall. The Valvoline car on the left side of screen, there's another view of the McDonald's replay showing Fittipaldi's initial contact with the wall. Horrendous impact that has left Christian Fittipaldi with a broken lower right leg. De Ferran, the man in the middle of screen, the Valvoline car, is okay, but he's obviously out in his spare car as Christian makes now this second impact with the wall and lifts off over the ripple strip, Derek.
Frightening crash at the start of this event, and we will do it all over again because any damaged cars have been repaired. Some drivers got a reprieve. I must say, I'm surprised Scott Pruitt stuck his nose in so early to Parker Johnstone, because an incident like that, he should know, because he's one of the most consistent drivers here and on street circuits. He should know he could put himself and Parker Johnstone at that early stage of the race. But now they're back at it again.
So as the cars prepare now for the restart, they'll go through a sequence of 2 or 3 laps to get tyres warm, transmission warm. It looks like we're probably going to have 2 warm-up laps. 3 warm-up laps, I've just been informed. Now let's see if we can find out just a little bit more about the condition of Christian Fittipaldi after that horrendous accident.
Situation. Christian is awake and alert. He has, the only injury is a fracture of the right lower leg. We're transporting him to the hospital now. He probably will require surgery later tonight, but everything else is good. He's wide awake and he's conversing and talking with no other injuries. What sort of...
That was Dr. Steve Alvey, the head of the trauma center at the Miami University Hospital back in the States. Steve travels to all of these CART races. He is a friend to everybody. Whenever you're in trouble, you like to see that friendly, recognizable face. You know you're in good hands. And Christian Fittipaldi, we wish him all the best, and I'm sure with Long Beach and so much of the season all packed into this early races, it's a heavy blow for Christian, but I'm just glad he wasn't seriously injured, although a compound fracture is serious for a racing driver. They're glad to get away with that from an accident that big.
Absolutely, and we've got Long Beach next weekend, as I mentioned before, Derek, and then a couple of weeks after that it's a 1 mile oval at Nazareth in Pennsylvania, and obviously Christian is going to be out of business for a while, and that's a devastating blow to the start of the championship where he looked very strong. Reigning champion Jimmy Vasser on board looking over the top of him.
And nobody has ever won this race twice, so Jimmy Vasser has an opportunity here. Can he play tactically into the end of the race? Can he go for broke by going hard and fast? Jimmy Vasser is not prone to making wild moves or mistakes early in these races, but I still think the man we will watch is Scott Pruitt because of the tyre story. All of the front-running cars in the top 10 anyway have elected to start the race on the soft compound tyre. They are faster, they don't last as long. A consequence of qualifying on those soft tyres means you have to start the race on them. Scott Pruitt and his team manager Jim McGee, who looked after Nigel Mansell when he was here, were the only ones to say, we don't think they live. We're going to qualify on the hard tyres. We think we'll be better off for the race. That is something we will watch very closely.
And Derek, when you review performance, both in terms of qualifying and the race, and you look at who's been strong here as an engineering and driver combination, it's certainly been the Newman-Haas team, but when Jim McGee was on board, and as you quite rightly suggest, that puts Scott Pruitt in good shape this afternoon. A tremendous shot as we look down through the Foster's chicane and along the Gold Coast looking south down towards Coolangatta, and it's another beautiful day up here in Queensland today. Ideal conditions for enjoying a race, probably a little too warm in the cockpit of the cars. The track is very hot, conditions very humid, particularly hard on tyres. And the story there is, as Derek said a moment ago, a number of the front runners on a softer compound option tyre, and this man here, Scott Pruitt, on the harder compound Firestone.
So still on a pace lap. They will do one more full lap under yellow before they turn everything loose again. A street circuit like this, particularly in this type of heat, is also physically very difficult. There are regular heart monitorings that go on with these drivers just to see the physical stress they go under. And believe it or not, a driver can have heartbeats in excess of 175 beats per minute for most of a 2-hour race. It is an incredible heartbeat to have sustained. So you can see that racing drivers are definitely highly strung and athletes. John, you're down there?
Yes, Derek. Jules de Ferran has just called into his pit, that is, he's called in on his radio, and asked very serious questions about the brake pads in his spare car. He's apparently having some difficulty in the braking areas. He asked, tell me about the brake pad, which one do we have in? The reply was, it's the pad like we used at the Firebird test circuit. So de Ferran is learning this spare car even as he is on the warm-up lap.
You might wonder where we get some of this information. John, in fact, has a scanner down in the pit lane. He can listen to the driver's radio communications to all of the teams up and down. So he is able to give us information seconds after the driver delivers it to his team manager or his crew chief.
And that's de Ferran in the Valvoline Reynard there driving this year for Derek Walker. Last year drove for Jim Hall in the Pennzoil car, and Jim, a long-time motor racing team owner and supporter, a former driver and a very successful one, retired at the end of 1996, and Gilles moved across to Derek Walker's team and took Honda engines with him. And that is a fearsome combination this year.
And he's now had 3 very big crashes in the space of one race and one lap. So Gilles de Ferran proving to be expensive for Derek Walker at this very early stage of this 1997 season.
And what does a chassis cost? Well, around about $420,000 US for what's called a rolling chassis. If you want to add some wing kits to it for the variety of different circuits, you can spend anything up to another $60,000, $70,000. Then you have to lease an engine, and it's an engine package that you lease, and you own the intellectual property for the course of that lease year. So IndyCar racing is a very expensive business. A couple of $1 million a year can easily be expended in engine leases. Most of the teams have a minimum of 2 chassis. Enormous support crews of people to be able to keep these teams on the road.
Okay, we're almost ready.